As I mentioned earlier, joining me in studio is CS Peter Munya, East African Cooperation and Northern Corridor Development, to have a discussion about his ministry. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, CS, for finding time to be here with us today. First things first, the vision of your ministry, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is to deepen and widen East African integration for sustainable development and improve livelihoods of all Kenyans. What can you say have been your highlights so far in the ministry in line with that particular vision?
Well, we've been reorganizing ourselves because the ministry was a department in another ministry for the last 5 years. So we've been looking at the structure and looking at what we've been able to achieve for the period that we've been, the department has been the other ministry. And we have now come up with a structure that is effective, that will help us deliver on our vision. We are also looking at, the ministry has also been depleted or human resource over time. So we've been also looking
because it was a department and a different ministry.
Yes, people have moved on, and there are many other areas that require certain expertise to be able to deliver on our mission. That we have concluded. Now we are embarking on an RRI, a Rapid Resource Initiative, for the next 100 days of, reconnecting with the public on the agenda of integration. It has been also taken to the back burner for that period. We want to engage the Kenyan public in general, because that is part of our mandate, to make the public understand what integration is all about, what benefits are there, and how they can participate in the integration.
How different is what you do in East Africa from what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs does when they are focusing on East Africa? When you give a directive, who takes precedent, your directive or that of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
Well, basically, the Ministry of East Africa is the coordinating ministry on integration.
Okay.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is largely the rest of the world, not East Africa. So we are the lead ministry in terms of East Africa.
So they would consult you?
If there's an issue that requires Foreign Affairs or any other ministry, because it's a multi-ministry agenda, we are the people who coordinate. Then so you are going for meetings, is the Ministry of East Africa that leads. If there's any communication, Ministry of East Africa. So we are the lead ministry in spearheading integration in East Africa.
What would you say are the biggest barriers to integration in East Africa from what you've deduced so far in your last 5 months?
Well, one of the biggest, one of the barriers, obviously, is the reluctance by some member countries from giving up on sovereignty. Because integration means giving away part of your mandate to be managed at the regional level. Sometimes also different understanding of what integration is all about. So that fear of letting go, so that East Africa becomes one of the biggest challenges. The other key challenge, obviously, given that integration is creating one market, so that people can be able to trade it freely, is the usual barriers that are put by other countries that keep slowing trade, yet we are one market.
So where is Kenya on
currently, one of the biggest challenges which we want to address during the RRI is even the barriers that counties themselves put.
Yes.
Transit goods being stopped, yet transit goods are goods meant for another market. They don't originate from that county. Sometimes even international market, and then slowed on the way. So we want to address that by, engaging county assemblies and the county governments, so that they can also be part of this vision of bringing East Africa together.
So your work is not just beyond the borders of our nation. There's also a lot of sort of bringing parties together within the country.
A lot of my work actually is internally.
Internally. Okay. Developing
policy, and engaging the public, actually campaigning. Part of a campaign is part of my mandate, campaigning with the public for the public to understand. Because if integration is not driven by the people, then it can't succeed. People from the grassroots all the way to the national level must understand and appreciate the benefits of integration, why we want to integrate, and how to integrate and how to participate to drive the benefits.
You mentioned countries that are reluctant to integrate. Kenya is not one of them, I assume?
Yeah, Kenya isn't one of them. Kenya is actually leading in terms of integrating. If you listen to our president speak, if you listen to him when he was speaking about his big four, he talked about also East Africans living in Kenya, freely coming to Kenya without any hindrances, settling in Kenya, doing business in Kenya, even marrying in Kenya. So Kenya is actually leading in this agenda.
Okay.
And other countries too, but I'm saying, sometimes there are discordant voices.
I want to talk about those discordant voices shortly. And to our viewers, you can let us know your thoughts. If you have a question for CS Munya, 22422 is our SMS line, and use the hashtag CitizenExtra, and I'll be posing that to him. Let's begin with Tanzania. The relationship with Tanzania is quite complicated. Let me give you an example. Earlier this month, Kenyan traders were complaining of alleged harassment by Tanzania government officials, adding to increased complaints against the country's customs and security officials. One of their members was quoted as saying, traders from Kenya are being frustrated by Tanzanian security officials, yet their people are doing business in our country, Kenya, without any problems. Doesn't seem fair. Have you received such complaints? Are they before your ministry? Are you looking at them? Just can you help us understand?
Indeed there are complaints and the incidences that are inimical to integration, and we are addressing our neighbors to be able to address those issues. There is a process elaborate going on right now to be able to deal with those issues so that both countries, citizens of the countries, can trade freely and travel freely, as the treaty that brought the common market and the East African community together envisions. Relations are supposed to be reciprocal. If you are trading freely in Kenya, it is expected that Kenyans will also be able to trade freely in Tanzania, and vice versa. So where there are differences and issues, then the law requires us to sit down and negotiate and resolve them.
To fix a problem, you need to understand its genesis. Where did the rain start beating the Kenya-Tanzania relationship, in your view, as you've done your research as the CS in charge of that ministry? Where did things start going wrong? This was not the case in the past.
Well, there are always some issues, and I think looking at the bigger picture, really, because I would rather we look at the bigger picture.
Not on where. Okay.
The bigger picture is that our relations with Tanzania is quite robust. You look at our trade between Tanzania and Kenya is quite huge.
Although our exports to Dar have declined.
There have been challenges recently,
yes,
and those are the challenges I'm saying we are addressing, and we will address them effectively to the satisfaction of the Kenyan public and the Tanzanian.
Do you have timelines?
Timelines soonest. In fact, we've been engaging.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been having meetings. We've reached certain levels of resolution. I'm sure Kenyans will see results very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon.
And that's your promise to traders, Kenyan traders who feel that it's not fair.
That's my promise.
Okay.
Trade is supposed to be two-way.
Okay.
Yeah, and benefits are supposed to be
two-way as well. Yes.
Equitable, shared across the board, and rules are supposed to be followed.
Okay. Yeah. It makes sense. Let's talk about one of the other East African players here, South Sudan, one of the 6 East African countries. And we know that for East African integration to work properly, each democracy must be thriving on its own. South Sudan fighting has gone on since the end of 2013, just 2 years after independence. But Kenya and other East African countries seem reluctant to impose sanctions on South Sudan. Yet foreign players feel there's been too much talk. What is the situation there, and how does that affect integration?
I think we certainly insecurity and instability in South Sudan affects integration. In fact, one of the conditions for joining the East African community, for you to be allowed, you have to be a democratic state. You have to be able to respect human rights. There are certain specific fundamentals that you must meet to join the community. And indeed, South Sudan may not have met all of them in entirety, but already when they had elections, they are an independent country, they are neighbor to Kenya, to other partner states, they met the criteria to join. But recently there are those challenges of the civil war that has not come to an end as was envisioned, that is posing serious challenges to the integration agenda in terms of people not being able to travel there, people not being able to trade, sometimes even our investments there being unsafe. These issues are being addressed within the INGAD process, and Kenya is part of that process. So right now on issues of security and stabilization of South Sudan, the community is not directly addressing them because we are part of INGAD
Okay.
And England
Niger
is
is taking the front
spearheading.
role.
Yes,
Okay.
England is spearheading that process.
Okay.
And if you ask me, sanctions is one way of attempting to bring change in a country. But sometimes sanctions can even escalate the problem you are trying to address. So in my opinion,
it's not the right way.
approach, sometimes these issues are very delicate. A country is young. It has just been, independence has just come. There have been many challenges in that country. There are even some foreign forces that probably also contribute to the destabilization, and sometimes individuals also. So jumping into sanctions, you can escalate the situation, make the situation worse. Because the most important thing for South Sudan right now is to try and build institutions, strengthen state institutions that will help in stabilizing the country. Now, the more you put sanctions on them, the more you weaken, the social fabric and the state institutions that will be in the long run. So I think England is on the right route. There may be, taking probably much longer than was expected.
That's right.
There is also issues of leadership within the countries, those leadership taking also responsibility for the issues they are addressing them. But I don't think going into sanctions is the right thing to do right now.
Okay. Yeah. But it might be an option in the future if the current measures.
No, for sure. Once England and the rest of the international community assesses. Maybe, but for now,
yes,
I think we are more useful being proactive in assisting the country stabilize than in threatening and trying to force a situation that is more delicate and more complicated than we might think.
Okay, fair enough. I'm pointing out all these countries because for East African community integration to fully happen, each country should be, in some regard, in a state of equilibrium. We've talked about Tanzania, the challenges they've had with Kenya. We've talked about South Sudan's internal challenges. But let me also bring up Burundi. The leader of a Burundian opposition coalition said this weekend that they would not accept the outcome of a referendum on extending the president's time in office, calling the vote undemocratic and marred by intimidation. What does unrest in a country like that, and we've seen that over the last couple of years, do again in terms of delaying integration?
For sure, any unrest in any East African country makes integration very difficult. Looking at Sudan, Burundi, for example, you will see there was, before the current crisis came in, there was a lot of attraction of foreign investments. There was stabilization, business was thriving. That is no longer the case because of the current situation that they are in. And East Africa is engaged. In fact, we have the former president of Tanzania, Mkapa, who is sharing a peace process based on the Arusha Accord that is helping to stabilize the country and bring the political players within the country together to find a solution to the problem. And it is the East African community that is actually paying and supporting the process, and the chairman of the summit of the East African community. Recently, when we had the summit in Kampala, the chair of the peace process was able to brief the chairman of the summit and the heads of state on the progress so far. There are challenges, but I'm sure eventually Burundi will stabilize.
One gets a feeling that in many ways Kenya is alone in fighting for integration. If South Sudan is trying to sort out its internal challenges, Burundi is trying to sort out its internal challenges. For some reason, the relationship between Tanzania and Kenya, and you said you don't want to get into the details of it, is still not on the right track. Is Kenya almost alone in this? Maybe
no, you can't say Kenya is alone because, all these countries are committed to integration. They are all committed to integration. You need to know that also integration is not an event. It's a process. It's a long-term thing. It's not something you say it's a journey, 10 years, then you have arrived. No. Looking at European Union, for example, the years they have taken to integrate, it's a long time because it's bringing every aspect of our life together. Actually bring the countries to become one country, because that is the dream of East Africa, to become a federation eventually. And if you look at the roadmap, you can see we have made many strides. Already we have a common market that is functional. There's challenges, sometimes like the challenges we have had with Tanzania, some of our goods not being able to be allowed into the market. Yet there's still a lot of trade going on. So if you look at some of the issues that you arise, you can't say now there's no integration because we have particular challenges. Every project, every agenda will always meet some challenges on the way. Okay. But largely looking at what we are doing, you see that we are all the countries, even the ones experiencing challenges at home, are still committed to integration.
Still committed to integration?
Yes, they are still committed. Looking at even the benefits so far, if we were to look at them, the common market is in place already. Of course, not completely implemented. For now, you can travel in any of the East African countries without a visa. Some countries you can travel with your ID, like Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. The other countries you still require a passport, but you travel quite freely because no visas and nothing. You don't have to say what you are going to do there. You need to just travel. Okay. Even Tanzania, you can even travel with the temporary travel document. Although you don't even require a passport.
We do have a lot of delays and challenges for Kenyans trying to access Tanzania or...
For sure, I've already said there are those specific issues with our friends and our neighbor in Tanzania that we are addressing. But largely, the community is alive.
The community is alive. That's a message
you're alive. Trade is thriving in East Africa. In fact, East Africa is the largest trading bloc for Kenya. Okay. 24% of our exports go to East Africa. There is no other country, other region which attracts 24% of Kenyan exports.
So it's in Kenya's
Kenya, actually, East Africa is the most important region in terms of trade, in terms of social relations, because it's our neighborhood. You can't replace your neighborhood with any other neighborhood. You may like other neighborhoods wherever they are, but your neighborhood is your neighborhood. So if there are challenges within your neighborhood, settle them as you go along. So I wouldn't say, looking at the bigger picture, that we have a big problem that is not going to be settled. No, we are moving. Looking back from when we started and where we are now, we have made huge strides.
Let me read you a couple of SMSs that are coming in. And 22422 is our SMS line. Use the hashtag CitizenExtra. Someone is saying, CS, kindly comment on wastage of time at Busia. When foreign vehicles enter Kenya, one time clearing a small vehicle can take close to 8 hours. And they're asking, so in terms of integration, this doesn't sound very, very integrated.
Well, I think that's probably an exaggeration. We talk about 8 hours.
8 hours.
A vehicle at the border is an exaggeration. We already have statistics on the time taken at the border. Okay. It has improved with the implementation of the one-stop border post that we have done with Busia. Yes, I saw that. Done with Namanga, and we are doing with Hispania. And all other important. Malaba is not yet functional. I think probably he was referring to Malaba. That's where we have quite some challenges, because even
but Busia should be a lot faster than this.
Busia is faster than 8 hours.
Okay, really 8 hours. Keep sending us your SMSs.
In fact, currently what you do if you are traveling, the reason why we call them one-stop border post is when you reach there, you are cleared on the country you are going. You go directly to the other country. Once you have just been checked, that you go straight to the other country. Officers from Kenya and from Tanzania, if you are going through Namanga, for example, officers from Kenya and Tanzania sit on the other side. So traffic going to Tanzania goes straight to the other side of the border. They clear you together. And traffic also coming to Kenya. You cross over to Kenya and you are cleared by the officers from Tanzania and Kenya together. That's why you call it one-stop border post. Time has improved. Am I saying there are no challenges? No, there are still challenges. And we are also visiting, inspecting, looking at what is happening on the ground. Okay. If there are some, barriers that have been introduced by vested, interests sometimes that come in, we are looking at them and resolving them. But the situation has improved.
Do you have any numbers off the top of your head?
No, not really. Okay. But the situation has, in fact, time wasted has been reduced by half.
By 50%?
Yeah, by more than 50%. Okay. Yeah, the time you spend at the border.
Okay, okay.
And it's going to improve even more as the automation is improved, because it's now automated. It's going to improve more, even as staff get more training to know how to manage time and to reduce the paperwork. It is going to improve even more.
Okay. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about IALA, the East African Legislative Assembly. And I've seen you there, from time to time. What can be done to make IALA more relevant and to be more specific to the ordinary Kenyan? Some have described it as a retirement home, a place to reward cronies or political appointees. In fact, one Yala MP has been accused recently of interfering with Nairobi County matters, making one wonder, do they have time to spend in Nairobi, or should they be in Arusha discussing matters East Africa? What is your take on Yala and its relevance in this day and age?
Well, Yala is very, very relevant because increasingly it's going to be the premier legislative body for East Africa.
When the
By the time we become a federation,
Okay.
and remember we are already now drafting a constitution for the next step of making East Africa a confederation.
A confederation, yes.
The heads of state have already
before.
given us the go-ahead to get a committee of experts to look at a way we can be closer. We may not entirely become a federation immediately, but we can merge many of the common services and all that to come closer to once a federation. So going forward, the legislative body becomes very, very, very important. And even now, there are many, many legislations. You may not have known about them because maybe the publicity and the information out there in the public is not that robust, and sometimes it's challenges of resources that make it very difficult to reach the public and get public to know exactly what is happening. But East African Legislative Assembly is actually passing laws that affect every citizen in East Africa.
As we speak.
They pass the budget, for example, of running the institutions of East Africa. That's one of the roles they do. The common market, they keep passing laws that continue improving on the common market. We are now going to be implementing the monetary union. Remember, one of the pillars of integration is actually having one currency. A
single currency, yes.
A single currency. And we are already in the process of working on that journey. And already in the last sitting of Yala, they passed the East African Monetary Institute bill that creates a monetary institute. The Monetary Institute is an institute that brings together the central banks of East Africa, sitting together to do the convergence, the harmonization that is required in preparation for a one currency. Probably in the next 5 years, okay, East Africa will be using one currency. That will simplify trade so that you don't have exchange rates, changing money, all that process that takes delays take place when you are dealing with different currencies.
In the next 5 years, that doesn't sound too realistic, yes?
I don't think so.
Or too unrealistic, rather?
I don't think so, because looking at the treaty and the timelines we had been given,
yes,
we are late. We should have been there by now.
What would we name this? Just out of curiosity, what would be the name of the East African shilling?
That won't be agreed, but remember there used to be an East African shilling before.
So just to
what's the problem with calling it East African shilling?
Why? And whose picture would be there? which landscape of all the East African countries, the highlights? Anyway, I don't know.
We haven't reached there. I'm sure these are, usually there is always a consultative process. Remember, even when the European currency came and it was given, there was also standards and the competition on how it should look and all those things. It's always a popular process. So people will be consulted.
Okay.
I'm sure even when we are amending the treaty to eventually now have one currency, there will be also consultations. How it will look like, there will be consultations and all that. And usually the currency would be pegged on the strongest currency operating in that region. Could be called East African, shilling or whatever. But people come up with a beautiful
fair
way
enough
of doing it. And it is a journey we are walking, and I think it's a very, very desirable and important step to take to make East Africa a fully functional one market. Because you can't talk about a single market when you have 6 currencies operating. Interchanging them becoming very, very difficult. Even mobile money will be now better operate will be, because it will be one
currency, and so you can just send mobile money across the different.
Even now you can send, but it's
limited
and more expensive. But that time it will be easier.
I want us to switch gears, but before I do, so the SMSs are really coming in. People are really following this conversation. 3 questions. Number one person is asking, why do Kenyans have to pay a CTA fee of 100 USD? And when Tanzanians come to our country, they are not charged. I don't know if you're aware about that. Another person says, why are we talking about integration while our brothers in Migingo are suffering?
Yes. Paying what?
CTA fee of $100 US. So is that a clearance fee?
There's no clearance fee to pay to come to Kenya.
No, to go to Tanzania.
Well, those are the changes we are saying. There are certain goods that we are producing in this country that are entitled to freely. Because if you are one market,
yes,
goods originating from any member state should be able to access the other market without any charges.
That's right.
And usually one of the challenges, there's things we call rules of origin that are used to determine whether those goods are local. Because if you are buying raw materials from abroad, for example, and we are manufacturing here, there is a debate as to whether what you have produced is local and therefore enjoys free entrance to the other markets, or it is not local. And that's what we call, we apply the rules of origin. And if the goods are 75% local raw materials, then they are considered local.
I know it's been an issue
now in Tanzania, sweets
yes,
and confectionery, there is that challenge right now, and that's we are addressing. I want to assure them we are addressing that matter, and we are addressing, and effectively we are addressing them.
Migingo.
A short time you find that we address that.
Okay, Migingo, way forward.
The issue of Migingo again is another issue that is thorny, and another issue that keeps cropping up,
yes,
because of the challenges of managing those common resources in Lake Victoria. You know, fishing, people fishing
the island and the water around the island.
The water and the island is a big challenge, because if you have a boundary where the island is in Kenya but the water is another country, and fishermen have to be able to travel to fish,
yes,
in an foreign country, that brings a lot of challenges that will be addressed. In fact, if we come up with this confederation charter that will allow maybe like Lake Victoria to be managed commonly, so that you don't have officials from one country managing, others not managing. We manage common resources together and come up with structures to manage, improve, for example, the existing Lake Victoria Basin Commission that is supposed to manage Lake Victoria. We manage it jointly. And challenges of who is fishing where and who travel on to where will not arise. And I think we are getting there.
So it seems the silver bullet for all these problems is integration.
Absolutely.
In your view?
Absolutely.
But when, yes? When, if you do your 5 years and we haven't integrated, it means these problems will remain to that, up until the time you hand over to your successor.
We are moving quite fast, and there is a lot of goodwill in the whole region. And remember, we have also said within the treaty there is also a rule that allows faster integration for people who are willing to move faster than the others, so that the others can follow.
Can catch up.
And for example, there is no problem with Uganda and Kenya and Rwanda fast tracking their integration faster than the others as you wait for the other. Like we have done, for example, with one single visa in East Africa. If you are coming to Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda and Tanzania, and Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda right now, and you are a visitor, you don't have to pay a visa for Kenya and a visa for Rwanda and a visa for Uganda. You pay one single visa, and you're able to travel to the three countries. So we would also look at Lake Victoria and see how we can manage it together. I'm sure it's one of the issues we are going to look into when we are drafting this charter. So it is possible to fast track for those who are willing, as we wait for the others to be ready.
Okay. Before I let you go, I need to find out from you. There are those who say, CS, that, and we knew you as a governor. In fact, I've had to correct myself a couple of times when I almost called you governor. That as a governor, you are very vocal, especially as the chair of the Council of Governors. But as a CS, they say that the Peter Munya we knew is not the Peter Munya we have here today. Have you changed?
Not really. I was vocal then because devolution was very young, and we needed to make it work, and we needed to entrench it. And having been a governor and also chair of the devolved unit, I had to do my job. For CS, I still have to do my job. But I have had to sit down and understand the ministry and start preparing, and you'll see me being more vocal as we go along. Okay, moving forward. Yes. When you come to a job, you have to take time to understand what, to be able to get the facts before you start moving and making. But surely, being a governor and also being a minister are not one and the same job. There are ministries that you're always in the field. There are ministries that you also spend a lot of time in meetings, looking at policy, thinking out policy solutions. So ministries are different. Devolved governments and national government are also different. So Munya has not changed. I haven't changed. I'm the same person, committed to the development of this country, and right now playing my role at the national level to contribute to the integration of this region.
You are in charge, you are heading the Council of Governors. What are your thoughts on this Council of Governors now? It's struck a more conciliatory tone with the national government. We're seeing them going for benchmarking trips together from Cuba to other nations. Yet when you are in charge, and of course when former Governor Isaac Ruto were in charge, we saw complete loggerheads between these two groups. What are your thoughts on the way things are shaping out right now?
I think you need to judge the two administrations differently. During my time and Ruto's time, we were setting up.
Okay.
The institutions were new. These new governors have just found everything working.
Everything.
Come and find a budget. In fact, I'm told some of them are even duplicating budgets.
Really?
The budget you left, he comes and the first thing he does is just duplicate the same budget you brought. Now we have to start everything from scratch. You know, this is something you must understand. And the whole country was, expecting all solutions of our national problems to come from counties. So that tussle between the national and county government was inevitable. You had to have it at the beginning. Now, when systems settle, each level of government understand its role. Even now, you become even more cooperative. And don't be cheated. There was a lot of cooperation even then.
Even then, okay.
Even then. Looking at, for example, this program they are initiating, they're implementing the devolution support program. It was initiated during my time, negotiated between me and the national government, settled and signed. But there were issues of, resources. We kept saying, let us have equitable, distribution of resources. I think we significantly contributed to
what people are celebrating now.
Available right now. So what is there to tussle about currently? What we need to see from the counties is proper management of resources that are there for the realization of the common goal of development of the country.
Fair enough.
The issues of setting up and restructuring have been sorted out by the first administration. So judge them and differently on the basis of the time.
How would you describe your relationship with the current governor of Meru County, Kiraitu Murungi?
My relationship now, you are going into issues that have nothing to, but I have no problem with Governor Kiraitu Murungi.
Okay.
He is a governor of Meru. I am a minister in national government.
I asked because at some point you were quoted in the media saying that he disrespected you, as a CS, and we know that you had quite the vigorous campaign period. In fact, at some point you had taken his declaration to court.
I took him to court because I had issues with the election, and that was my right to do it. The president took the responsibility to bring us together and resolve our dispute. And, he thankfully gave me a job at the national level to serve. My interest at that time was to serve, and I got the opportunity to serve now at the national level. So I have absolutely no issue with Murungi. He has his job there, I have mine.
You have your job there.
All I've been asking is we need cordial relations and respect for one another.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you, if the Meru people called you back after 5 years and said, come back, would you consider it?
Right now, my mind is focused on this job I have.
Okay.
And I don't have to go there. I have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your mind is focused on...
I've already been governor.
Yes.
I don't have to be governor again.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, I have not made my mind on what I want to do. I want to concentrate.
At some point, you had said 2022 could be an option for you to go for a higher seat.
Many options.
Many options.
You have many options. In this world, when you are here, many options. It is you to decide which options you want to take, and you have reasons for why you want to take those options. But I'm just telling you, currently, I have not made up my mind on what I want to do in 2022, what I want to run for. I may even decide not to run and concentrate on other
things.
That is not part of what I'm addressing. I have a job I've been given. I want to deliver in this job.
Okay. One last question before I let you go. Something peculiar happened last year, and CS, you still need to help Kenyans understand this. At one point, you were with your own party, should be PNU.
Yes, PNU.
Then you joined ASA. Then we saw you at State House with Jubilee. Kenyans have never quite understood what happened at that point, what was going on. And with the handshake, a lot of things are now coming to light. Tell us, CS, what was going on behind the scenes with what we saw that time? Raila said you were under a lot of pressure.
The truth is that was you know, and just lost an election.
Yes.
And I was not happy with the way I lost the election. And as a personal opinion, that everybody who participates in an election, as people can have different opinions. And at that time, I thought I should join the opposition. But the president called me after that and explained my issues to him. And some of the issues are actually and something to do with the party.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we struck an understanding. And I to the side I belonged.
To the side you belonged?
Yes. I left the side I belonged for only 1 week. So after the president called me, and if you are called by the president, he talks to you, you have to listen.
You have to listen.
So I went and listened, and I was convinced. So I went back. Now I am back. But I think the handshake has helped this country. I will not be talking about integration and all these things if the handshake was not there. I think reaching out, President reaching out to Raila, and Raila also reaching out so that the country can settle, embark on development, I think is extremely important. And if we could concentrate on that, the country really energies can be put into focusing on the issues of the day-to-day issues that affect Mwananchi before we go into electioneering and politics of 2022. I think it will serve this country. And that's what the president has been saying.
Let's focus on the president.
Can you forget about elections who will be elected in 2022 and focus on delivering the big four? That's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm with you here now, focusing on integration and trying to make Kenyans understand what the benefit they can reap from.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you, CS.